night when stars are in light, though we fell, we would know. My world will never ever leave you in doubt. I don't see what all the fuss is about. I didn't know I had to watch my tongue. Now you know that I'm alone with God. Yeah, you know it's true. I'm too taboo.
Hi everybody, you're all very welcome to another show of Revenue Hacks with me, Khristina Quigley, in association with Raise Up, Women in Hospitality Travel Tech's new name, and also STR, our new main sponsor. We have a great show ahead of you today. We're going to be focusing on APIs. Is it really that easy? And how are we going to be able to move forward in the future? So we'll go around the room quickly and we'll introduce everybody and we'll kick off the conversation. So as you know, I am from Hoist Group. So let's go with Sheila.
Hi, I'm Sheila, founder of SK Consultancy. We offer revenue management services for hotels in UK and Europe, London-based, of course. Hello, everyone.
Yeah. Hi, guys. My name is Thibault. I'm the founder of Catala Consulting, a company that does revenue management for hire services across Europe. And yeah, very happy to be here and to discuss with Sara and Mendel today.
Sarah.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sara. I'm Senior Manager of Data Operations at STR. STR is a hotel data benchmarking company, and I've been with them for 6 years, based in London.
I can't believe it's 6 years with STR. I think we've all been with STR for years. And Mendel, last but not least.
Great. Yeah, my name is Mendel. I'm co-founder of Katanox. We're a new distribution platform for hotels and apartments, so in general accommodations, and we're really focused on bringing new distribution channels to hotels via an API connection instead of the traditional way.
I love it. I love how he throws in the API connection as well the whole way through, because that's what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about all APIs. Is it really as easy as what it seems? So let's kick off this conversation because we've had some great talks in the background over the last few days about APIs. And I think if anyone doesn't understand what an API is, I think someone should actually mention that right now. So Mendel, I think, what is an API?
Well, API actually stands for Application Programming Interface. And you have to imagine that if you look into working with software, and then more especially looking into the hospitality industry, the experience with software is mostly through a user interface, so a graphical user interface. And graphical user interfaces are 9 or 10 times just a front end built on top of an API. So API is not a bus; it's just a foundation of how software is being used, and it makes a lot of sense nowadays to use it for integration into the operations, become more efficient, and let's say this way. Just skip the user interface, and I think that makes it for everyone, especially in the hospitality business, very easy to understand how much value you can have from working with your operational and revenue management systems, connecting them through an API instead of typing it from one interface to another. Does that give a clear picture?
Sarah, do you have anything to add to that?
No, absolutely.
I mean, you were asking it.
I think most of us have heard maybe that restaurant analogy of, maybe think about this in layman terms. If you go to the restaurant, you sit down at the table, you pick what you want to eat, and then you make your order with the waiter. The waiter goes to the kitchen, grabs the food, and brings it to you. And so the waiter is the API. So in simpler terms, the API is just a method of going to get information from another server or the kitchen, if you want to think about it that way.
I love that. That's actually, I've never really thought of breaking it down into an analogy such as that. So that's a new one. Taking that one with me. So I have a question for you guys then, obviously, because APIs are open, which we've learned in the background it's not really, but do you think this is going to change how people within hospitality look at tech stacks? Do you think this is the end of the master tech stack that people have and that it's going to be almost like a jigsaw puzzle in the future?
No, it's just going to let's say extend the role of the tech stack for a hotelier. Looking into connecting your let's say keyless check-in or doors to your PMS, or distributing your content from your PMS into a travel seller. That's just a matter of automation, and automation is not happening by trying to bring information manually from one place to another, but just to connect the systems and distribute the data through the API. So the role of the tech stack will only become bigger. And I think COVID also showed last year that the wish of hoteliers to automate more and to have more integrations with other pieces of software they work from distribution to operations and finance and revenue management, to combine this into one. And that's also why you see now all the big property management systems moving into communicating that their API is open. And the question is actually, and that's one which makes it for us, of course, very interesting. What do we understand? What do we how do we interpret open? Because open, it can be something where you can get access to right away, or after signing contracts and doing lunches and calls, etc., before actually getting access.
Yeah, and I think when we think about what open means, it's maybe easier to debate what open is not. And so what are the assumptions that we say of an API is open, and that's great, but what are the limitations of it? And from my experience, the conclusions I've come to is that an open API doesn't mean that the data is available. It doesn't mean that what you're looking for is available. As mentioned on the definition of what an API is, it's really just a method of going to get the information, but it might not mean that the information is necessarily there. So it's really about companies following a specific structure to make sure that if I say that I want to connect with you following HT&G standards, that's how the API is structured, that it makes sense, and we know exactly which endpoint we want to connect to. That type of structure or just being a very specified way of connecting doesn't necessarily exist. It's not very standardized in this industry. I would also say that an open API doesn't necessarily mean that it's easy to connect to, and I think what Mendel was just mentioning about viewing the data all in one place, that's definitely something that we see with hotels. They're investing a lot more in technology, and I think they very quickly noticed that their wish to view everything in one place is not an easy one to accomplish, particularly with connecting the data and setting up the APIs, because there's different structures with different systems. It's just it's not always helpful. I'd also say that Open API doesn't mean that it's free. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's free to get the information because it's there. It's not because a structure of an API is on a website and it's public that it's free for you to get it. And then lastly, I would say that it's not about getting full access either to a database. So even if a company has an open API, it doesn't mean that they make available absolutely everything that they do. There is limits to what an API what you'll find there.
So here's a question from me, right? I mean, with the current pandemic times, hotels are expected to adapt a lot of new ways, especially in technology, to facilitate the guest journey. Pre and post, also during is very critical. And there's so many new softwares out there, for selfless check-in, menu ordering. All of these softwares, they require an API, a so-called a waiter, to talk to the existing hotel systems. But the challenge here is, not everyone in hotel are tech experts. I mean, as a consultant, probably we are now more aware of all these technologies because we are dealing with a lot of tech partners. But if you speak from a hotelier perspective, and an existing revenue manager or the general managers, they are not tech experts. So how do we educate API? Education is one piece. The second thing is we're talking about all the limitations. Is it the hotel's responsibility or the tech provider's responsibility? Everyone's silent there.
Yeah, great question.
Well, I mean, you can take it pretty straightforward. If you look into the use cases, then of course the traditional engineer is one who makes decisions into what API to integrate and how easy it actually is. So in fact, I know it sounds weird, but this is not the audience to discuss if an API is easy, yes or no, because we're all not writing code or integrating our code into other applications. So that's definitely a discussion which should which also should be done with more engineers in the room. I have a very urgent request here.
But I would say that it is our responsibility, like the hoteliers, the ones who really want to see this happen and want to be the end consumers of the information that the APIs collect. It is our responsibility, I think, to say what it is that we want to see. What do we want the information to be made available? And we should voice that we want it to be easy and that we want it to be standardized, because most hoteliers will at some point come across integrations and integrating systems, and it is something that's becoming just more and more part of what being a hotelier means, dealing with technology and integrations. And the integration piece is just such a barrier to entry. It's not something that's done easily. I think, yeah, most of us maybe on this call have had some type of experience with integration, and it can be a very complicated discussion that we just need to learn how to have with the different vendors.
I think you're right. I think it's a role of the third party to make sure it's as accessible and as simple as possible, because it's not the responsibility of the GM of the hotel to understand and to connect directly to the tech, because they don't have this expertise. So it's a role of those guys like Katanox to make sure they make the process as simple as possible, and just with one click, even if we don't understand the backend, in the front end, it's as simple as one click. So there's a big education part, but you don't need to learn how to code, or you don't need to learn how to connect to the API directly, because you have some guys who can do it for you at a simple click.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're on silent, I think.
Every time, like, seriously, how can I even get this right? So we had a really interesting question from Jerome. He's asking in regards to data security. Does anyone have a view of this in regards? How does API affect the integrity of data and security?
Well, I mean,
that is the most secure way of transfer data.
Yeah. So the infrastructure of databases and how it's being distributed is not something which is different in a situation if it's distributed by an API. So data protection should be taken care of as normally is done. The distribution actually of the data, of course, there should be extra security, but that's just a matter of let's say, how you make your API accessible to indeed like a pre-built-in integration, like Thibault just mentioned, or that you give access through a documentation environment in which there are very clear descriptions how data can be enriched, and of course also how authentication is taken care of and security.
I think it's important, to note that API is just another added structure architecturally, and it's up to the properties in particular and the property managers and their vendors and everyone, third parties, to actually keep the data secure. API doesn't lend any massive extra security. Essentially, it's down to everyone to protect the data correctly. I think that's a huge thing.
Yeah, but it's the same when it comes to OTA or channels. Like I would say that we go with quality over quantity because it's better for the control. And the API is exactly the same, because instead of having like a different connection to different systems, you have only one, for example, one single API. And this kind of thing allow you to control even better than having like thousands of different connections. So in a way, if you manage to secure this single connection, then you are much more secure than having like thousands of different connections.
So let's talk about securing connections, because this is really important, because we just had this conversation. Sarah so rightly brought it up at the start that languages for APIs are not the same everywhere. So as Mendel said, it's about how we perceive open, and not everything is open. So to me, when you say open means open. The door is open. You can get in there. Your text is there. connect to us, okay? There's no queue, there's nothing. I've learned last week through talking to Mendel and Sara that is not the case. So, you know, is it a case that globally we should bring in, you know, an architecture that it's all one language, or what would you recommend to people to do right now?
Well, I mean, again, to emphasize a bit more on what is open. If you see today that, and then let me refer to a PMS, because I think that's the biggest technology used in the hospitality industry. But then well, call me an average PMS. You open up the page and you search for API documentation, and I think there's 1 out of 10 who's actually making this available, and then maybe 1 out of 10, no less, but then 1 out of that 10 is actually giving you directly access to a sandbox, which means you authenticate with an account you create, and you have some dummy data to look at. And of course, if you want to move into production, you have to go through a certification of that software provider, and that software provider will then say, it looks like your application is actually bringing value for our users, or is not bringing value. And I think you can definitely compare it with how you are trying to post an app on the Apple App Store. I mean, not everyone can build an app and then release it to all the Apple users. You first have to go through certification. You have to take care of your authentication. Of course, the people on the vendor side need to make a very clear statement on indeed how security is taken care of, and from that moment on, your application can go live to the users of the vendor, and that is the best open situation you can have, and that's only this really small, tiny portion of the whole industry who makes it available like this.
Khristina,
well, looks like Christina's on mute. That's why I had to come in and save the day here, because
thank you. That's exactly
I had to jump in and get this thing fixed. You guys clearly can't do this without me.
No, absolutely not. I don't even know what part of the States you're in at the moment. Are you in LA or San Fran? But you're very welcome to the conversation.
Yes, I am in San Francisco. I flew here yesterday afternoon, same time zone, but my Fitbit alarm decided that it apparently was different. So didn't wake me up. So we're talking about apps, right?
Blame the Fitbit.
We're talking about API, yeah. So you haven't really missed much. I'm sure you'll catch up really, really quickly. We did have a really good question just come in there, asking, so how can hotels push for integrations and transparency, education when it comes to architecture? What can you guys recommend? I think Sarah's frozen, so Mendel, this falls on you.
How can hotels push for integration and transparency education when it comes to architecture? How can hotels push for integrations? Well, I mean, I think hotels can push whatever they want. I mean, it's just a matter of, is your tech vendor able to give you the ability to give you more integrations? And besides that, that's technically, you also see commercially that right now many of the vendors are making use of the opportunity of the hotel, of the property, who actually says, oh, I would love to have this integrated. Yeah, that's great. You will get 5 integrations in your basic account, and you'll get 10 in your upgraded account. Oh, your upgraded account is a little bit more expensive. And that's actually the two items which are stopping hotels for going out for more integration. So hotels, if you really want to reach something, yeah, indeed, put pressure on your vendor and actually say, hey, come on, I'm only going to do more business if I have an extra integration, an extra application, which is also good for you, PMS. So that's the only pressure you can bring there. But the market is changing right now really fast. And I think we can see this now with for example, Oracle. Opera was always the biggest monolith in the industry, absolutely not being open, stopping everything, putting big taxes on the bill of the hotel, and nowadays they are one of the biggest evangelists in the market of actually opening up their systems for external integrations, and giving hotels the ability to build themselves technically, to become really more of a API first platform, and I think that's a big win for the industry, and that could only happen because of the pressure of the hotels, and possibly COVID also helped a little bit.
I think time is definitely changing. Time is changing, and people, I think, even for us, when we source a new hotel stack, one of the key features we always ask is to know if they have an API and if it's open or not. So today, a system, whatever system, tech system out there, doesn't have an open API. That's something we will not select at the end. And I was going to jump on it, Mendel, but Oracle is a perfect case study because they used to have for thousands of years, I'm exaggerating, this very close API. And if you wanted to integrate, it will cost you a bomb. And today, because of the pressure of the market, the same with the vegan burger with McDonald's, with the customer behavior changing, they have to adapt and they have to open the API. So yeah, definitely, I think it's definitely the future, those kind of API.
I also remember, I mean, this was like 5 years ago, when you're sourcing like different systems and softwares for the hotel. And then when you ask the partner, okay, does this system, integrate with this other system? And they were like, yes, we can, but you have to pay extra amount of money. And it's like, why? Why does hotel has to pay for that?
I think that's a historical thing, though. You must remember these tech companies need to find a way to make money to pay for their vendors and the developers. However, I'd like to point out that internal time isn't as expensive as what they make it out to be. I understand it just takes time, it takes money, it takes technology to do this, but I don't think the actual cost should be there. I don't think the cost should outweigh the benefits of doing it. We did have a question from Daniela, who actually wrote, how key is it to have API for the performance of a small B&B or a hotel? So Daniela actually runs a number of properties in Marbella. She's got apartments, she's got a lot of things. So how important is it to her from a business perspective for her? Yeah.
Well, I think again, there are two use cases, and I only know something about the distribution use case. So if I may answer that from that perspective, it would be pretty straightforward to say, as a B&B, you should actually start building very close relationships with your travel sellers, and because they, if you as a B&B, you want to pick your audience instead of like the big mass coming in via the huge OTAs. So building those one-on-one relationships with small travel sellers who bring you a certain type of audience who is exactly fitting to your B&B. That's something where distributing your content, your availability and rates by an API makes absolute sense. I mean, that all of a sudden, it's not anymore connecting with the Booking, Airbnb or BRBO or some other Expedia platform, but just working with small applications who do deliver exactly the people you want to work with, and distributing directly all the content, rates, and let them post bookings in your PMS without having to answer phone or receiving an email and then typing it yourself into your PMS. That's especially the use case where the API business is going to change a lot for the operations in hospitality, especially when you're a small B&B and don't have a large team of people in your reservation department to handle things.
And for us as well, on the BI tools, BI perspective, API applicable to any small businesses, apartment, and so on. Instead of having to do every morning some thousands of different report extracts into our database, into the Excel spreadsheet, and so on, we connect to one single API, which goes directly to our Excel spreadsheet, or goes to Power BI, Tableau, and so on. So from a reporting perspective, we gain a lot of time, and I think that's definitely something you can apply at any levels, definitely.
So, Sarah, as you just joined us again, we're actually having a conversation about the importance of API for small businesses, B&Bs, and anything to do with hospitality, because one of our girls had a question for us on that one. So we have another question in regards to data workflow, accuracy between all tools. Do you think open APIs are one of the key bypass integration limitation issues? Who wants to take this one?
Yeah, great. And sorry, I'm happy to maybe just comment a little bit. Sorry about that my internet just dropped. But I think when it comes to collecting data via API, as mentioned earlier, it's really about the information that you want to get. And I think one thing that that it really allows us to understand is getting good quality information, because you get it on through the most secure way that there is to collect data in comparison, maybe email or SFTP or in any other way, because it's all, it's all server systems speaking to another, not having any manual interaction is great. It just allows for higher accuracy, and I think that's where having a standardized sort of API structure allows for higher quality, because you know that organizing the data in a similar way you're getting is the quality that you need. And
I think to do with the, I don't think APIs are key to use it as a, no, we can hear you. It's a little bit broken. But APIs to bypass integration limitations, I don't really think all APIs are suitable for that. There's a service bus, which you can integrate to be able to do that. But I don't think APIs are always that one that's going to be used for it. It's not going to be the savior of everyone's problem when it comes to integration. Because as we've just learned from Sara and Mendel, that, not every system is 100% open for this. I think that's
I have a great example of APIs not being open or working properly. I spent a lot of time with a certain company. I don't know if we want to name the company on here, but that has a very old system, and it's known for being an old system. And all they do is keep building systems on top of it. So you've got, this old DOS-based system, and then they keep putting something else on top, a revenue management platform on top, a front office management platform on top, and it just, nothing ever works properly. So for you guys who are, I guess, have more of the expertise on the API and the software side, would it be better to just create a brand new system as opposed to keep trying to connect to this thing that way?
There's a number of really cool systems on the market that are actually quite open and quite flexible. There's a lot of new players that came to the market and were spearheaded before the pandemic, which actually were working quite well. And I think that people should look at ways to make sure, as Sheila said earlier, that the integration in the tech stack is right, that you are picking it just for the right reasons, and everyone should do a proper RFP. I don't think there'll ever be that one system that will be like the Oracle of the world years ago before it became Oracle. That will be almost like the creme de la creme that everyone will have. And, if you mention a PMS system, what's the first one that comes into people's brains? It's that particular system.
Yeah.
And I don't think you'll find an open system that would be as popular as that in the past. But I think what's interesting is that the future is bright. And I think that for sure, people need to have the right business partners involved to build these systems. There is no point on a hotelier building a system for a hotelier, because what I could deem, key from the financial, hospitality, revenue rooms, F&B aspect could be completely different to what you want, Calvin. So I think that's where it should be almost like an open table conversation with a few different business partners to build these type of systems, because you're never going to be able to satisfy one person or everybody, but at least you're able to build something that will correlate to a lot of people. Maybe there's a market for that right now. Maybe we should all put our heads together.
I was going to say, I think it's time to end the show, go backstage and start brainstorming this. Let's do it.
No, but it's the interesting component here is that also, and that's one thing you see in the last 10 years, hotels went a lot more direct, right, to the customer, building on websites, and they use right now a lot of the booking engines of the PMSs, and more and more of them also start to understand what a PSP, so a payment service provider, is, and actually say, hey, why don't I take a Stripe account or an Adyen account and integrate this and receive my money this way? And I think that's always a kind of learning curve where also more and more hotels and the mid-sized chains will at a certain point start to recruit engineers to actually say, hey, can we build something ourselves which talks directly to the functionality of our PMS, And that's actually the point when you can say, all right, this is open or not. So again, use case is always very important to the level of how much engineering power is in this discussion. And I think the hotel, let's say the hospitality business, will start to hire the next mass engineers in the upcoming 10 years.
Which means that means that we are really behind. Sorry.
Absolutely. I mean, compare the hospitality industry right now with where payments were 10 years ago. I mean, if you had an e-commerce shop 10 years ago and you wanted to sell something, and I mean, I live in the Netherlands. Ideal is here the #1 online payment. In Germany, it's Sofort. In China, it's maybe Alipay. And if you were selling your product in all these markets, you had to integrate all these separate payment methods one by one. And that's actually where companies like Adyen and Stripe came in and actually say, hey, let's put everything together and we give one API to those e-commerce companies, and ta-da, they have all the payment functionalities in all the markets. And I think that's as soon as the hospitality business starts to understand that that's actually how they can start to become more efficient instead of building continuously, piece by piece. That's when also the acceleration will come through, and an API will just be an accepted standard.
You mentioned something actually quite interesting when you say those hotels want more direct connection, or they want to have more control over their own API or whatever. Why do you think hotels should decide to distribute via an API, or should create their own BI tool via the API connection instead of using the traditional ways, such as a channel manager when it comes to distribution, or instead of using a BI tool directly, like, we'll not drop any name, but do you have any specific use case when it's not like cutting the middleman to go directly, but why an hotel will do this instead of going with a traditional way?
That you mean what a good example is of let's say this way. You see right now a whole new range of API first PMSs, and these API first PMSs, they cater to the new kind of hospitality groups, and those are also the ones who are growing the fastest in the market. Looking at Sonder in the US, looking at Cozy and Limehome in Germany, and I know it's not a hotel. And the personal touch in the hospitality business is always very important. But if you build the customer experience from booking until check-in, until checkout, everything in an app, I mean, why is the customer experience for those kind of companies so much more important than, for example, the bunch of flowers on the reception desk for a traditional hotelier? And that's also a little bit where we stand now in the market, and slowly going into the right direction. But imagine one thing: if you are in your normal life dealing with taxis, dealing with people who bring you food, etc. Your customer experience right now is a B2C customer experience where you accept something in your app. I mean, why is it that you're in your business still go back to underwater screens right? I mean, it's weird. So we just have to go through that. The business world in the hospitality business just has to go through that demand of, I want to have a B2C experience. It's ridiculous that I order my taxi or accept a taxi deal with one click on the app, while if I get an RFP in from a GDS, 5 emails have to be sent up and down, 2 calls, etc., before I can actually sell a room, right? And that's just the industry has to demand more. And I think companies like Cozy and Sonder and Limehome, they show that it can be done, and that they only focus on platforms, on vendors like PMSs who are API first, who just deliver functionality instead of how something looks. And how it looks, you can build on top. So that's my answer to very long answer to your question. What is a good example? Well, I think that's a great example, and I also believe that is where the big chains are going to grow into, and where big companies like Oracle with Oprah are preparing for.
I think that's really interesting the way you've put it that way, because again, there's systems out there that's pretty much built for functionality rather than being sexy tech. It's not great looking, but it does work.
Yeah.
And I think that's the right way of going. And you just mentioned about B2B and B2C partners, having that direct connect rather than having that, service bus or a middleware, like a channel manager or something like that in between you and that. I love that idea. I love that whole futuristic that. It's almost like going back to how hospitality was years ago. You manned everything manually. You manned your OTAs manually, and you gave live inventory out to everyone manually. I think that whole element needs to come back, where we don't rely so heavy on middleware to be able to do that, because sometimes the middleware actually inhibits you from doing that. And although your live inventory is everywhere, you can't segment by market. Whereas if you want to sell by market, you can use a system like to be able to do that, to be able to push it, and be able to close out as you want, which is one of the coolest things about it.
Yeah, and the hospitality industry is not the only one who's going through this. I mean, you see the rise of the B2B marketplaces right now in so many different verticals. I mean, a really weird example is what we see right now is that, of course, the cargo industry is moving really fast now into connecting truckers to shippers through an app instead of like sending faxes and also like the hardware industry for let's say making roads and ordering sand and all that. So many of those industries right now go through this new B2B marketplace dealing environments, and they only thrive through transparency. And again, it's a bit weird that we are today looking into how, for example, hotel rooms are being distributed. Yeah, still doing it this way, and that's also one of the things when we found out the need to start our company. We also knew for sure that if we would have started it 2 years ago, OTAs would actually have said like, "Huh? What? No, no time. There is no interest." And today there's a lot of interest to actually say, all right, I'm just evaluating all my distribution channels over 2019, and of course it won't be the same in 2022. So I have to change something. So this is the moment to accelerate in the adoption of new software and new technologies.
Yeah. Welcome back, Sarah. It's great to have you back with us, and just in time, because I do want to talk to you about adopting new technology and accelerating this. So, for STR, it's important to be able to connect in with systems. How are you finding using connections into PMSs at the moment? Do you think that it's the hospitality industry, we need to step it up 100% to be able to bring correct and accurate data to the likes of STR, who are one of the big data powerhouses for industry information?
Yeah, great. And gosh, I can't believe today is the day my internet doesn't work. So when it comes to STR, so we work with hotels all over the world, and in order to benchmark the data, we need to collect data in a consistent way all over the world. So if you're a hotel in China, if you're a hotel in Brazil, no matter where you are, you'll report data the same way to STR. And the data that we collect really it's fairly simple. It's just rooms available, rooms sold, rooms revenue. And sure, yes, we need rooms sold excluding complimentary and house use. So there are some tweaks there of the data that we need to collect, but it's really aggregated information that we only collect once per day. So really, if you think about it in comparison with maybe other systems like channel managers that have live connections for availability, I think that the connection that we try to establish with the systems is a very different one, where the data is quite simple. But I do encounter some challenges where I find that some systems, or maybe they will only have, for example, transaction level data that's available. They don't have any aggregated information. And in order to benchmark, we need the aggregated information to collect that like that. And those types of endpoints don't necessarily exist out there. And so from my perspective, I think there's a lot of space for innovation in hospitality. And I think it's quite interesting to compare hospitality with, for example, the banking industry and what happened in the UK since 2018, that open banking has become really a law, that the biggest banks in the UK have to make their data available for the startups, and they have to make the data available in a consistent way. And enforcing this has allowed for innovation in that industry, for all types of, online, for all types of innovation in that industry. And that industry is a really old one, if you think about it, where it was all really ruled by the big players. And so I think when it comes to hospitality, if we all, in a way, combine our efforts to follow similar structures, to make these integrations available in a similar way, will allow for more innovation and for more startups to really lead the way forward here, and to make more information available in a more seamless way.
Well said. And as usual, Khristina is on mute, so I have to come in and save the day here. But I did just want to chime in on what's been said. I think, we keep coming back to this conversation when we talk about tech and hospitality. And at the end of the day, one thing Mendel said before when he was speaking is, creating the experience for the customer, right? We all have such smoother experiences with, like he said, ordering a taxi, Sara said banking, whatever it is, you can go on your phone and get anything. But when it comes to hospitality, one of the largest industries on the planet, we're so behind the curve here. And for me, just in my experience, what I've seen, it's a lack of this over focus on ROI. Everybody's focused on, we need this immediate return. If we're going to spend this money on the software and the technology, immediately we need to make that money back somehow. And everything doesn't work that way. And we need to realize that are you focused on creating the experience, right? And eventually,
so what delights,
that will come.
What delights a guest more? A bunch of flowers on your reception, or a fantastic app and you don't have a reception anymore, right? I mean, or let's say counter the desk where you normally receive someone. So,
and I'd even add that it's not. I think what's really happened in this industry is that it's not so much anymore about the data or the product of what you do after you consume the data, but integrations itself has become a whole product here in our industry. I think, obviously, I'm not overly familiar with too many other ones and how it works in other industries, but there's many companies that have made a whole business out of integrations and just the connection itself, because that's just how difficult it is. And the fact that there's companies that can, commercialize on this big problem just shows the magnitude of the problem in this industry, in my view.
Yeah, well, within the hospitality, sorry.
No, go on. We'll get to it, because I want to get to a really important question, which ties in with this.
Well, just for distributing data, companies like Zapier are a great example to actually get and post data between different applications, and I think that's how you that's also how you should see how those integrations can actually exist, because you cannot build a customer integration for every use case. So you still need, let's say, some do-it-yourself in that integrations world, because property management systems are still being managed on-prem, just like on a computer in the basement of a hotel. They still exist. So happy integrating. That's not going to happen. I mean, cloud is still a big word in the industry. So as soon as all the big change moving into web-based PMSs, then you're really getting into that mode.
I think cloud is still a taboo word, though, as well, within the industry. Although there's so many new systems coming on board, there's a lot of legacy systems who are trying to do it, who just can't do it correctly at the moment. They're beta testing everything, still isn't working right. Some big ones, to name the creme de la creme out there, has had serious mess ups when it came to it. But I do have a really cool question, because Calvin brought up about hotels looking for ROI right away. And we got a really good question from Jerome. He says, he's sorry he's got another question, by the way, but Jerome, we're always happy to answer any of your questions if you have. So will OpenAPI reduce raised IT costs for hoteliers in the end? So if we pay for all these different integrations over time, will it bring, a proper reduction on all our costs that we pay? Mendel, you're laughing over there in the corner. So what are you laughing at?
Well, I mean, again, I think it's just shifting cost, and you have to look into the long term ROI. That's so. Imagine right now you have someone in your lobby waiting for guests to receive, and that person is going to cost you 35K a year. I mean, there's some cost blindness here, because if you don't need that person because you have a super delightful app where someone can take can manage everything, and the passport was already fixed through the applicant through the booking. I mean, then better invest 30K right now into some great technology to have that to give that guest that user experience through the application on their mobile phone, when they check in, instead of having someone standing there doing nothing and scratching the backend 10 years in a row for 300K, right? I mean, so that's, of course, initially the tech cost will go up. There's no doubt, but that's with every investment you do, and so that should not be a showstopper.
I think it depends on the technology that you're talking about, because, for example, okay, it could be a larger investment initially to create the direct connection and to use the API itself. But if you remove the middleman that you used to pay a monthly fee, then you can reduce your cost. And then even later, when it comes to, for example, distribution, you can even make a better commission. So you make a saving on the commissions. So the IT cost may remain the same or may reduce if you manage to remove the middleman in the middle, but your commissions at the end will reduce, and that's why I see it's a big win for those APIs.
Yeah. So every investment needs a business case in that sense.
And I think also maybe it's not just about IT itself, because obviously any type of automation or integration will require maintenance, right? It's not after you've built it, it doesn't go away. You have to maintain it and nurture it, and there's changes, and so you have to now connect to a new endpoint, or there's all types of after you build it, it's only really just the beginning, maybe for that. But for example, at STR, we establish these types of integrations to help clients automate their data. So data automation is something that we want to be able to provide to all hotels. And so for which we have to connect with the different PMSs, which are really sort of the source of the data, or the systems that provide the source of the data that we need. And so that means that if the data is automated, the night's auditor or whoever submits the data manually can stop doing that, meaning that they gain some time. It will also mean that the data will no longer need to be submitted manually, so the quality of it will be higher, meaning that your star reports will also, you'll be able to just make the best possible decisions for your future strategy and ensure that you continue being, or strive to be, number one in your comp set, and therefore being as profitable as you can be. So I think that when it comes to IT costs, from my perspective, it might just be sort of the beginning. So they might in a way increase, but it will give you all the right tools and opportunities to generate more revenue in the future.
We're going to use that clip and send it to every revenue person on the planet, because I don't know any revenue person doesn't walk in and Monday, or any morning and just cross their fingers that night, oh, they got it right.
I love it, but it's so true. We've been through this industry for so long, and I think we've always said this on Revenue Hacks, is that when you start investing in technology, you need to stop this constant look for an ROI right away. It's not going to come right away. It's the added benefits that come with it over time. Like being able to automate data, to be able to ensure that the data is correct that's coming across to you and your counterparts, be it STR or even a financial report you're sending to Sage. All these things really help the bottom line. It's not adding extra workload onto people. I think that's the whole idea behind this as well. We are running out of time, so unfortunately we can't get to all the questions, but I do think, Mendel, especially, you need to go back into the chat and look at Alice's question, because it's all about booking APIs, price parity, OTAs. So I know that you're going to be able to do that on LinkedIn. I would like to thank Sara and Mendel so much for joining us today. It was actually a really, really good show and insightful. I think we could go on about this for over an hour and get to the questions. But we do have more episodes coming next week. We're able to take this conversation offline. So again, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Sara and Mendel directly, or else Thibault, Sheila, Calvin and myself. We're more than happy to get in contact with everyone that needs to be able to share counterparts. If you're not on STR already, I can highly recommend that you do get onto STR and start sharing your data equally. You get market insights, you get Forward Star, you get so many amazing pieces of information on your markets, 100%. and that's something that's free to a lot of people. You can always pay for it as well. There's a lot of extra additional meetings you're able to get, so it's super. And we would always push it within our team, and not just because STR is a sponsor, but because it's what everyone in hospitality uses to benchmark. And we all should be benchmarking ourselves, even as we're recovering. It's really, really important right now. Stop looking at 2019 and 2020. Focus on now to the future, for sure. Okay.
Let's just forget 2020 altogether.
Yeah, exactly. Right, everyone. Thank you so much for this week. We will see everybody next week, same time, same back channel. See you.
See you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much. Have a great day. Bye bye.